Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada for Reason to Resist on July 25th, 2026. Within the past 24 hours, the Iran war has expanded dramatically, even as the Trump regime paused its attacks on the Islamic Republic. The war has now spread to Saudi Arabia and in a big way. After the Saudis struck the Yemeni port of Hodeidah last night, Ansar retaliated by launching a new wave of missile strikes on Jazan, Saudi Arabia, with footage circulating online showing large fires raging in the city. And just to orient ourselves, I'm putting up on the screen here a map of the southern part of the Red Sea, the Bab Al-Mandab Strait, and the Gulf of Aden. And you can see in the lower right-hand quadrant of this map, shaded in gray, is the country of Yemen. And then if you look along the Red Sea coast of Yemen and let your eye go up to the border with Saudi Arabia, just north of the border, you can see the city of Jazan on the southern Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia. Now, in southwestern Saudi Arabia, power outages were reported in several areas, while Arab sources said more than 5 explosions shook Jazan, according to Fars News. Other reports pointed to direct impacts at Aramco facilities, with the likely target identified as the company's marine terminal near Jazan city for primary and downstream industries. There are also credible reports that Ansar has struck other vital infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. In this report, we'll share more dramatic footage of the attacks on the Saudi autocracy, and we'll also update you on Iranian strikes on U.S. targets in the region. Before we get into it, please remember to like and share this video if you find it to be informative. And we're just about to pass through the level of 190,000 subscribers. That will be our highest ever number of subscribers. We keep marching upward and are aiming to have an excess of 200,000 subscribers by the end of the summer, which will mark the 2-year anniversary of Reason to Resist. So please, if you're not already a subscriber, do become one. Help us to expand the reach of our unapologetic resistance journalism. And even if you are a subscriber, you can help expand the reach of our journalism by encouraging other people to subscribe. Now, with that, let's review how we got here. As we reported previously on Reason to Resist, Ansar announced this week a blockade on Saudi shipping through the Bab Al-Mandab Strait, which connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. This is a hugely important maritime transportation corridor, which Ansar has successfully blockaded in the past. Even a blockade that was more expansive than this one, which is reportedly confined to Saudi oil tankers. Now, the blockade came into force, the Ansar blockade, after the Saudi Air Force recently bombed the airport in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. And again, we reported on this at the time. What happened was, although there has been a years-long inhumane criminal blockade imposed upon Ansar, the region controlled by Ansar in Yemen, by a Saudi-led coalition, the Iranians, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was just in advance of the 7-day funeral program for the martyred Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, sent a civilian aircraft to Sana'a to pick up some representatives of the Ansar government so they could be taken to Iran. There's no aircraft going in or out of this area for quite some time. It's, as I say, it's having dramatically negative impacts on the innocent population. But a civilian pilot with a civilian aircraft braved the blockade, succeeded in landing in Sana'a, and transported Yemeni government officials to Iran for the funeral. On the return flight, the Saudis decided that they were going to bomb the airport in Sana'a, the capital, to prevent the landing of this civilian aircraft. And much to the credit of the courageous pilot, it did land, although not at Sana'a. It landed at the airport in Hodeidah. Now, at that point, the Yemeni forces and government said they had had enough, and they soon imposed or declared their blockade. Ansar then launched drone and missile strikes against rogue Saudi tankers that tried to breach the blockade through the Bab Al-Mandab Strait, and at least one of them was lit up like a Molotov cocktail, and we're going to show you footage of that particular vessel burning in the Bab Al-Mandab Strait.
يتحاصروا. شو النار.
Now, yesterday, the Saudis responded to the Yemeni attacks on their tankers by bombing Yemen yet again. And here you can see a report on, I believe this was the Tasnim Telegram channel. Tasnim is an Iranian media outlet. Saudi Arabia bombs Yemen after Houthis hit its tankers. Saudi attack struck Yemen's Hudaida province and Kamadan Island, according to Tasnim, citing Yemen's Al-Masira. Telecommunications facilities in Hudaida were reportedly among the targets. The strikes came after Yemen's Houthis attacked 2 Saudi tankers with missiles and drones on Thursday. After the Saudi attacks, Ansar Allah vowed all-out war. And here you can see summary of a statement. Again, this is on Tasnim's Telegram channel by Muhammad al-Bahiti, the spokesperson for Ansar Allah. He was quoted as saying that the attack on Hudaida port means all-out war between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. Mr. al-Bahiti, by the way, who has been interviewed on this program. I interviewed him a few months ago. He's a very eloquent spokesperson for Ansar Allah. Also very courageous, because he's undoubtedly been putting his life on the line from the moment that he chose this very public role as a representative, a spokesperson for the Ansar Allah government. In any case, he said that this will be a war in response to the Saudi invasion of Yemen's Hudaida. Targeting Hudaida port means an all-out war between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. This war will not end except with the complete cessation of war by all parties, the complete lifting of the blockade of Yemen, and the withdrawal of all foreign forces present in Yemen. That is a very, very high bar for ending the war on Saudi Arabia. And I don't think that, given the record of Ansar Allah and its demonstrated propensity to fulfill its threats, I don't think that these statements should be taken lightly. This is probably a harbinger of a long and bloody conflict between Ansar Allah and Saudi Arabia, which could continue to expand throughout the region, for example, to Iraq and Syria. In any case, shortly after the warning that Mr. al-Bukhayiti delivered on behalf of Ansar Allah, social media were flooded with videos of massive fires at the Aramco facility in Jazan. And I'm going to show you, first of all, before we get to those videos, some information on this facility so you understand the importance of what has been struck. This is from the Aramco website. The Aramco company, of course, is this gigantic Saudi oil company worth at this stage probably trillions of dollars. This page of its website describes Jazan, its facility there, as a new, smart, self-powering refinery. The Jazan refinery complex was designed to expand the development of the region while also creating a diverse portfolio of products. And then the Aramco website goes on to say that this complex is designed to process up to 400,000 barrels per day, while at the integrated gasification combined cycle IGCC plant generates power in a range of downstream products. So it's not just a massive refinery, it also produces electricity. Now, by exploring new cutting-edge technologies for byproduct recycling and waste power recapture, the Jazan complex aims to achieve improved productivity while operating with lower emissions. That's laughable, as if the Saudis care about emissions. In 2006, Saudi Arabia drew up ambitious plans to build a new industrial city in Jazan in the far southwest of the kingdom. The main aim of this initiative, the Jazan Economic City Project, was to expand the economic development of the region. At the heart of the project is Aramco's fully integrated Jazan, the refinery and petrochemical complex, the result of an estimated $21 billion of investment, which, when operational, is expected to produce both high-value products and power in a more sustainable way. Again, it should be outlawed, the use of the word sustainable in the mouth of any Saudi official or corporatocracy. In any case, one has to really question the wisdom of the Saudi autocracy here. They made this $21 billion investment right near the border with Yemen and the part of Yemen that is controlled by Ansar, while at the same time they are engaged in acts of aggression against this country, which has the ability to inflict devastating damage on its key oil infrastructure, not to mention other infrastructure. I mean, if you're going to make that kind of investment so close to the border of Yemen, with the Yemeni forces having the destructive capacity that they have, you'd think that a rational leadership would first try to find a political solution, a negotiated political solution to ensure the protection of this gigantic investment near the border of Yemen. But no, the arrogant and grotesquely incompetent Saudis, who are made more stupid by the day due to their undeserved obscene wealth, they decided to proceed with this massive investment, even while engaging in regular acts of inhumane aggression against this very determined and capable enemy. And now the chickens have come home to roost, so to speak. Here's more footage of the dramatic fires at Aramco's Jazan refinery. I'll show you 3 separate clips. Here's the first one. Now, here's a further one. Now, as you can see, those fires are not likely to be put out by conventional fire extinguishing techniques. And in fact, the first video we showed you at the very top, you may have noticed there were a number of firemen kind of standing around doing nothing because presumably there was nothing they could do to put out this massive fire. And the final video I want to show you of the aftermath of the Jazan strike was apparently taken this morning. It is now daylight. So this video shows conclusively that even by the morning, they hadn't managed to extinguish really anything, nothing of significance at the Jazan facility. Here's that video. And again, you can see there are multiple plumes of smoke coming up from the massive facility. Now, for at least 6 hours after these and other videos of Jazan flooded social media, the Western corporate media, as far as I can tell, completely ignored what was happening in Saudi Arabia. During that period, I repeatedly checked the websites of the New York Times, Guardian, and Al Jazeera and found no information about the attacks on Saudi Arabia, although there were numerous reports about the Saudi attacks on Yemen, which preceded these explosive attacks on Saudi Arabia. But meanwhile, the Iranian media, including Tasnim, were reporting that Yemen had struck back, hitting multiple targets in Yemen. And here is some of what Tasnim published on Telegram while the Western media were trying their damnedest not to disclose severe damage to Saudi oil facilities. You can see here images of fire columns rising from critical facilities in Jazan, Saudi Arabia. Then another report, reports of heavy explosions in the city of Zamdan, Saudi Arabia. Yemen sources, the news indicate that air bases in Saudi Arabia were targeted, so not just oil facilities. And then Yemeni sources, the air base in Khamis Mushid in southern Saudi Arabia was among the targets that included in the Yemeni attack. Then in the early hours of this morning, after these various reports appeared and there was just a mountain of social media imagery emerging from these attacks on Saudi Arabia, Ansar put out a statement officially confirming that it had retaliated by striking Saudi targets. And this is a summary of its statement. on a resistance Telegram channel as part of the Saudi enemy regime's persistent blockade of the Yemeni people, and in yet another violation of the sovereignty of Yemen, the Saudi enemy launched a criminal and unjust aerial aggression last night, carrying out several airstrikes against the city and port of Al Hudaydah and Kamadan Island. These strikes caused material and moral damage. Interesting what they mean by that. I suspect that means not just damage to infrastructure, but also human beings were wounded and or killed. The statement goes on saying Yemen's air defenses engaged a formation of enemy aircraft after they violated Yemeni airspace, preventing them from committing further crimes against this great people. In response to this blatant criminal aggression, which is precisely what it was, the Yemeni armed forces carried out two qualitative military operations. The first targeted sensitive facilities belonging to Aramco and Jazan using dozens of ballistic missiles and drones, while the second targeted sensitive Aramco facilities in Yanbu using a number of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. By the grace of Allah Almighty, both operations successfully achieved their objectives with direct and precise strikes. Now, I just want to pause here and point out that the Greek military claims, it put out a statement that, and I previously reported that the Greeks have put a Patriot air defense system in Saudi Arabia. That's just one of the ways in which the craven vassal of Washington, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, is helping the U.S. and Israel to prosecute this criminal war of aggression. The Greeks can say that this is purely defensive, but the fact of the matter is, if you're minimizing the damage being done to Saudi Arabia in retaliation for its aggressions, then you're less likely, our targets of the aggression are less likely to be able to deter Saudi Arabia from committing the aggression in the first place. So the fact of the matter is that the Greek government, and I think that this is undoubtedly a position that the large majority of the Greek population opposes, the Greek government is helping Saudi Arabia to commit acts of aggression against innocent countries in the region, particularly Yemen, which has been so ravaged by this monstrous autocracy that it does the bidding of Washington. In any case, whether or not you agree or disagree with the decision of the Greek government to be involved in this way, the claim should be taken with a large grain of salt. As U.S. weapons expert, former MIT professor Theodore Postel has said, the Patriots, as best as he can tell, succeed in taking down 1% to 2% of the ballistic missiles that they try to engage. So the idea that the Greeks, who have very little experience, by the way, Greek military, in using Patriot air defense systems, that they managed to take down not one but two ballistic missiles from Yemen, I find that highly difficult to believe. But one thing is for sure, or reasonably sure, a lot of those projectiles got through, and whatever was intercepted was not enough to prevent major damage to this cutting-edge $21 billion facility. So there are also, as I've indicated, unconfirmed videos of what appear to be fires in Yanbu, and I'm going to show you one of those videos. The person who posted it, I'm not able to confirm that this is from Yanbu last night, but the person who posted it said this is footage of an oil pipeline on fire. Now, just to orient us again here, I've put up on the screen a second map. This one shows the northern end of the Red Sea. I showed you the southern end of the Red Sea in the first map imagery. And here again, you can see in the lower right-hand quadrant of this detail, this is the Red Sea, and on the right side of the Red Sea is Saudi Arabia. On the left side is, I believe, Egypt. In any case, on the Saudi coast of the Red Sea, down in the lower right-hand corner of this map, you can see on the coastline Yanbu. And this is an extremely important port for Saudi Arabia because there is a pipeline running across Saudi Arabia from the eastern end of the country to Yanbu. And that pipeline has been pumping millions of barrels of oil a day out into tankers in the Red Sea. And most of those tankers, many of which are super tankers, what are known as VLLCs, they have been traveling through southward to the Bab Al-Mandab Strait and then on from there to export destinations in Asia, such as India, China, and Japan. And in this way, the Saudis have been able to export through the port of Yanbu, even as the hot war has been going on and Iran has been prevented from exporting its oil, somewhere in the range, I believe, of 5 to 7 million barrels of oil a day. So this has not only continued to earn huge amounts of money for the criminal Saudi autocracy during the war it has helped to perpetrate against Iran, but in addition, it has alleviated pressure on the price of oil, which has been of considerable assistance to the Trump regime in the prosecution of this war. Now, of course, with the Bab Al-Mandab Strait cut off, the only way to get those vessels safely out of the Red Sea is through the Suez Canal. And that will, of course, increase the cost because you have to pay the Egyptians in order to use the Suez Canal. Getting one of these tankers through the Suez Canal, it's a slow business. And as I'm going to show you, it is very expensive to take a detour through the Suez Canal to get your product all the way to Southeast Asia. So let me start by showing you a comment from an oil industry expert whom I've quoted before. He's based in Alberta, Canada, and his name is Eric Nuttall. He posted on X just after the blockade was announced, with the Houthis striking 2 Saudi-laden vessels overnight and 90% of Yanbu exports on VLCCs that can't fit through the Suez Canal. We risk losing part of this critical 4 million barrels per day of exports. Prior to the Houthi entry, total Yanbu, Fujairah, Hormuz exports were down 6.6 million barrels, and this number is now clearly increasing. Floating storage has been absorbed. SPRs have been drained, SPR being Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And most crude production growth is long cycles. Simply put, we do not have enough barrels in emergency stocks to make up for this gap. Something is going to have to give, with energy stocks discounting approximately $66 for West Texas Intermediate. We remain bullish. Understatement of the century. If you're an investor, you may want to think about going long on crude oil, but please don't blame me if that investment turns out to go sideways for you. I'm not a professional investment advisor. In any case, I want to show you another interesting comment on X about the Bab Al-Mandab Strait blockade. And here you can see from Kipler, this is a highly reputable maritime transportation firm, consultancy firm, and they show that alternative routes from Mideast to Asia with vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandab Strait exposed to attacks. An alternative route for a tanker carrying Saudi oil to Asia involves circumnavigating Africa, adding a month to the journey. 48 days via Suez, Africa, 19 days via Bab al-Mandab Strait. So it's not just a question of time. Of course, there's additional cost. And as Eric Nuttall pointed out, these largest tankers can't even get through the Suez Canal. They're just too big, which means that they're going to have to find Saudis a larger number of smaller vessels to continue transporting their oil through this very lengthy and costly alternative route. Now, the problem for the Saudi dictatorship is not simply that its tankers are likely going to have to avoid the Bab al-Mandab Strait and take the far longer and costlier route around Africa. The problem is also that Ansar Allah can shut down Saudi exports from the Red Sea altogether by blowing up Saudi oil infrastructure along the Saudi Red Sea coast, especially at Yanbu and Jazan. And that is not a problem that will be fixable overnight. Even if there were to be a negotiated solution to the blockade in the Bab Al-Mandab Strait tomorrow, it could take weeks, months, who knows, maybe even years to repair damage that has been done to date to key Saudi oil facilities. And if this bloody war between Ansar Allah and Ansar Allah and Saudi continues, as I think it almost certainly will, there's going to be a lot more damage to critical Saudi infrastructure, and it's going to be offline for some period of time, even after there is a negotiated solution to the war, assuming that one is ever achieved. And as I just explained, Ansar Allah has set the bar very high for stopping the war. They're saying you have to lift the blockade on Yemen, something which the Saudis have refused to do for a very long time. And you're going to have to remove all of your forces from Yemen. All the foreign forces, including those of the criminal United Arab Emirates, are going to have to leave Yemeni soil. And as I say, the Ansar Allah, they tend not to bluff. I think you should assume they're serious, and that portends a long and very destructive conflict between these two sides. So in any event, whatever the outcome of this may be, there is no question that this is going to be having an impact on the price of oil. And there has been a stunning increase in the price of oil during the past 2 weeks of barbarism by the Trump regime. Here's a report, breaking news issued on Thursday, the 22nd, I think it's the 23rd of July, by the New York Times, when the price of Brent crude soared past $100. And it went briefly above 100 and stayed around that level, just around $100 until the close of markets on that day. So now, of course, this is certainly a psychologically important threshold. Seeing a 3-digit price for a barrel of oil is undoubtedly going to grab the attention of a lot of ordinary folk in the United States who are being hit hard by the increase in the price of oil. And so, predictably, the following morning, Trump engaged in more theatrics with a view to bringing down the price of oil. And you can see what happened on Friday, the next day. Even though there was really no credible news to suggest that this situation was going to sort itself out anytime soon, the price of Brent crude fell by approximately 3%. You can see it's on the left-hand side of this image from oilprice.com. It's the second crude oil product listed there. You see WTI crude on the left at the top first. It went down 3.12%. And actually, Brent crude almost went down 4% on Friday, yesterday, to $96.78 a barrel. That's still way up from where it was down in the 60s just a couple of weeks ago. But that's a significant drop for one day. And that, of course, raises the question, what happened on Friday to cause such a significant drop in the price of oil in such perilous circumstances? Remember, when the price fell on Friday, the Ansar Allah forces had just blown up a Saudi oil tanker in the Bab Al-Mandab Strait. And anybody with a functioning brain would know that it was very likely that the Saudis were going to hit Yemen as a result of that strike on a Saudi oil tanker. They weren't going to just take it sitting down, and then the Yemenis would strike back. So at the point, we get to Friday morning at the opening of oil markets, there was every reason to believe that there was going to be serious escalation between Ansar Allah and the Saudi autocracy, and that might well involve major attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure. So for the market to react in this way at that particular moment in time makes absolutely no sense, which of course brings us to another episode of the Donald, flapping his filthy gums. Here's what he had to say.
About blowing up civilian power plants and bridges. Much of the civilized world would consider that a war crime. Do you?
I won't respond to that question. Who are you with?
The New York Times.
I figured so. Failing New York Times.
What is the...
Let's just stop there. Okay. I mean, even a child could understand that Donald Trump had no answer to offer to this very pertinent question about whether these attacks on Iran's civilian infrastructure are war crimes. They clearly are war crimes. And if he had anything to say in that regard that was meaningful and plausible, he would have said it. But instead, he explicitly refused to answer the question and immediately pivoted to attacking the New York Times reporter. Let's be very clear. This man knows he's committing war crimes and he just don't give a damn. Of course, he's not going to admit it because that may be used against him in a court of law one day. Now, here's what he says when he's asked, what is the exit strategy?
Exit strategy.
Well, I think there's a lot of them. There's a military exit where we just keep going just the way we are, and we can even make it a heavier dose, and it's knocking out everything they have. Or there's a smarter strategy, and that's you make a deal, and they want to make a deal. I just don't think they're ready yet.
For God's sake, how many times have we heard since this monstrosity began that the Iranians want to make a deal? In fact, there are credible reports circulating that Iraqi mediators presented the Iranians with another ceasefire proposal, apparently modeled on the MOU, and they instantaneously rejected it. In any case, whether or not Donald Trump is begging for another ceasefire behind the scenes, it's entirely possible he is, and maybe he isn't. Maybe he is, and he's lying, and he's getting ready to launch an even larger attack on Iran. Who knows what is in the mind of this madman? But one thing I think we can say with confidence is that the Iranians have no interest at this particular moment in doing any kind of a deal with this treacherous, perfidious, pathological liar. Let's hear what else he has to say.
But they do want to make a deal. Sometimes they don't want to say they want to make a deal. They want to be the tough guys.
Have you made a decision about the major strikes that you were referring to? Okay. Should we expect to see major strikes?
Look, we're talking to them right now. I think they're getting more and more serious as the days go by, for maybe the obvious reason.
And when you
We're
say
very
that
serious.
you're talking, is it Mr. Kushner or Mr. Witkoff, or who's involved in those talks?
Sort of everybody.
Yeah. You know, because these talks are a figment of his imagination, he didn't have an answer at the ready when he was asked an obvious question. Who's involved in these talks? So rather than try to give any kind of an answer that would pin him down, he just said, well, everybody's involved. Witkoff, Kushner, J.D. Vance, Narco Rubio, they're all involved because it's a figment of his imagination. That's why he answered the question in that way.
J.D. and Marco and a lot of people to talk to. A lot of people to talk to. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal indeed. In any case, I can't identify any plausible reason for the substantial reduction in the price of oil yesterday, other than these ridiculous claims by Donald Trump that the Iranians really want to do a deal and that they're more and more serious about putting an end to the hostilities. Apparently, there are still a lot of idiots active in the global oil markets. In any case, the oil markets are closed for the weekend, but unless there is a major de-escalation between now and Monday morning, which I think is virtually impossible at this stage, expect oil prices to head back above $100 per barrel on Monday or shortly thereafter. So that, of course, leaves us with a question: what is happening in the main theater of conflict, the war between Iran and the United States? Well, let's go first to the report put out on resistance channels of the attacks that each side carried out, the operations they carried out during the Thursday night, the night of July 23rd, July 24th. We'll start here. CENTCOM said that during that night, it had prevented 12 ships from entering the Strait of Hormuz or leaving the Strait of Hormuz pursuant to its blockade on Iranian ports. The U.S. attacked a site in Yazd. Following U.S. attacks, explosions were also reported in the Iranian cities of Ahvaz and Dimeshq, Bandar Abbas, Khorramabad, likely targeting the missile city there, Keshem Island, Jask, outskirts of Kondab. U.S. attacked a site in Nain, Isfahan province at 3 a.m. U.S. attacks in Bandar Abbas have injured 2 people. In Koromabad, also 2 injuries. U.S. attacked the IRGC's Navy's Hazrat Sayed al-Shohada headquarters in Zibakanar in Gillan province, all the way in northern Iran, and they were struck with standoff munitions. So this, I can tell you, we don't need to get out a map, but as of this moment in the conflict, it had become clear that the United States was going further and further inland with its attacks and was not confining them any longer to the southern coastline of Iran. So then this Telegram channel report goes on. I believe this is from the Tasnim channel. The Iranians apparently denied that there were attacks in Khorramshahr, and the total number of injuries, according to Iran, had reached 645, and the number of martyrs, 55. So far, 586 of the injured have been discharged after receiving medical treatment. Now, in retaliation, Iran's army targeted first fuel storage facilities, large equipment warehouses and hangars, and U.S. Army soldiers' barracks at the Sheikh Issa Air Base in Bahrain, aircraft hangars, maintenance hangars, and barracks at the Muwafaq al-Salti Air Base in Jordan, U.S. military equipment warehouses at Camp Buring in Kuwait, a U.S. troop deployment site at Camp Doha in Kuwait, a U.S. forces deployment site at Camp Arfijan in Kuwait. And it goes on here. The IRGC targeted a very large ammunition depot at the U.S.-operated Ali al-Salam Air Base, and through a series of explosions, completely destroyed it using advanced super heavy OWA drones. U.S. Army barracks hangars were also struck. 6 large hangars were completely destroyed, while 3 others sustained severe damage. Several were killed or wounded at the Ali al-Salam Air Base in Kuwait. Visual proof of the interception of an American cruise missile in Kanuj Kerman province, and I've seen that visual evidence. It does indeed look like a U.S. cruise missile was taken down. And they struck the IRGC, the remaining standing building of Amazon's intelligence data center, as a follow-up from their previous operation. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. At the moment of this writing, this summary, some operations have not yet been announced. Please read the follow-up post. Then the most interesting news, perhaps, aside from the attacks on Saudi Arabia's critical oil infrastructure, came out this morning after all of that, all of those fireworks during the night of July 23rd and 24th. The New York Times reported that the fighting between the United States and Iran appeared to abate for at least one night, though tensions remained high in the region on Saturday as President Trump considered whether to intensify the military assault against Iran. For the first time in about 2 weeks, U.S. forces did not announce a wave of overnight attacks on Iran. A spokesman for Iran's health ministry said on social media that there had been no new attacks or casualties. Now, although the U.S. did not strike Iran last night, it appears that Iran did not stop firing at U.S. targets, and for the time being at least, Iran has struck the last blow. What am I referring to here? I'm referring to a reported strike on Bahrain, and we have what appears to be a video of that strike carried out last night. And again, just you can see the explosion when a missile or drone makes impact. So what is going on? Is that really the last blow in this war? In my view, there's just about zero chance that that will be the last blow. As usual, I would love to be wrong, but I see no reason for such a high degree of optimism at this stage. Why do I say this? First, the calm last night might simply be a prelude to the storm. Some Iranian media, in fact, report that the Iranian leadership expects a huge escalation this weekend. Moreover, even if Trump will not engage in a huge escalation, he has solved nothing by attacking Iran every day during the past 2 weeks. In fact, the Trump regime is now much worse off than it was when this round of strikes began. Hormuz is now entirely blocked. There's almost no traffic going through, whereas there were dozens of ships getting through during the very brief time that the U.S. lifted the blockade on Iranian ports. Furthermore, the Bab Al-Mandab Strait is now closed to Saudi Oil tankers. Third, Saudi oil infrastructure is going up in smoke. That was not the case before this round of hostilities began. Fourth, the oil price is back near $100 per barrel. And finally, major damage has been done to U.S. military bases and other major assets in the region, including casualties to U.S. military personnel. On the U.S. military front, more important satellite imagery has emerged of Iran's successful attacks. For example, Iran published a high-resolution satellite image of the complete destruction of a U.S. ammunition depot at the King Faisal Air Base in Jordan after Iranian missiles struck the base. And here is the image. You can see on the right side the before, and you can see on the left side the after. That large structure has been totally obliterated. And I must say, the precision with which that was done is quite impressive. The strike appears to have been a direct hit. There's no crater around or near the hangar where there's no impact site in the soil. So it looks like there was a direct strike with a drone or missile or perhaps a combination of them. Also, newly released high-resolution satellite images show fire coming out from the Amazon data center in western Bahrain after it was struck by an Iranian drone. And here is that satellite imagery. You can see in the red rectangle in the lower right-hand corner of this image, there's black smoke rising up from this data center. Iran had previously struck another Amazon data center in Bahrain as well. Meanwhile, the Trump regime is getting hammered by the media for concealing U.S. casualties. This is an article that was just published in Newsweek. Pentagon blames troop deaths disappearing from sight on data disruption. So yesterday, it was discovered that the number of deaths killed in action that was being acknowledged by the Pentagon on its website suddenly dropped. Now, according to the Newsweek article, 3 military officials gave an explanation for the change, which conflicted with what the Pentagon had said. This is according to the New York Times. The military officials told the Times that the Trump administration decided to remove 4 service members killed between July 17th and 19th, only 3 of whom have been publicly identified because their deaths occurred after President Donald Trump declared a ceasefire in April. The 3 officials spoke on conditions of anonymity, citing sensitive internal discussions, the paper said. The ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran collapsed in recent weeks after Trump accused Iran of violating its terms. Interestingly, this news precipitated a scathing commentary from Marjorie Taylor Greene, the former Republican congresswoman who turned against Trump in a big way after he, A, launched criminal wars of aggression all over West Asia, and B, refused to disclose the Epstein files in which he is clearly implicated. And here's what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say on X. The Department of War is not counting these American service members' deaths in the official tally of dead U.S. soldiers from Trump's war against Iran because they claim they were killed after Trump signed the MOU, even though we are bombing every day. This is repulsive. Yes, it is. And by the way, this is just a sample of the harsh commentary being directed at the Pentagon for concealing the true casualties. So in any case, the U.S. military is clearly in big trouble, and so too is Trump. But that's precisely why Trump may engage in a massive escalation at any moment. Now, a couple of final items I think to round out our report should be discussed. First of all, Trump's most recent commentary on Truth Social, which does seem somewhat ominous for what that's worth. This is what he wrote yesterday. President Xi at our recent meeting in Beijing, China, told me that he would not under any circumstances give or sell weapons to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that statement included Chinese companies. By the way, the Chinese government is vigorously denying that any such assurance was given to this pathological liar. He goes on and he writes, considering our relationship, I take him at his word. And besides, I am doing him very big favors also. Yeah, like trying to destroy his economy by depriving the Chinese economy by depriving it of oil? Are those the big favors? Arming Taiwan, is that one of the big favors? Preventing the Chinese from having access to semiconductors made in countries that are dominated by Washington. Is that one of the big favors that Trump is doing? I could go on. He goes on and he says, Donald Trump, likewise, President Putin, despite the horrible war going on in Ukraine, the relationship remains as it does with President Zelensky, told me that he would not sell weapons to Iran. He understands that I do not sell weapons to Ukraine, but to NATO countries. They pay full price, and how those weapons are distributed, I have no idea. He has no idea that those weapons are being given to Ukraine. This is all being hidden from Donald Trump with all the massive intelligence resources at his disposal. I've never in my entire life seen any public figure. In fact, I've never seen any individual in my private life who lies as shamelessly, as audaciously, and as absurdly as Donald Trump. This man is in a league of his own when it comes to dishonesty. And he concludes this post by saying, therefore, two major countries that people speak of often in terms of Iran are, in my opinion, not participating. If they did, it would be very bad for them, certainly not in their best interest. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, Robert Pape, the University of Chicago professor who has become quite prominent in alternative media recently because he's an expert in escalation, put out an interesting comment on X after seeing this post. He said, Trump is essentially warning Xi and Putin to stay on the sidelines. Strong indication big escalation is coming soon. Trump threatening two great powers with nuclear weapons shows just how dangerous is this escalation trap. Brace for impact. Well, to be fair, there wasn't certainly an explicit warning to use nuclear weapons against China or Russia. And even Donald Trump probably has just enough intelligence and sanity to know that if he did such a thing, it would mean the complete obliteration of the United States and something that he himself would be unlikely to survive. So whatever Trump has in mind here, let us hope that it doesn't involve the use of nuclear weapons. And whether or not this signals a major escalation, Professor Pape could be entirely right about that. Or it could be Donald Trump just beating his chest because that's what he loves to do. In any case, there was an interesting interaction between the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and an American so-called journalist in the last couple of days. And I think the clip speaks for itself.
Helping Iran target U.S. troops, sir.
Nice hairstyle.
Just in case you didn't hear it, when the foreign minister of Russia was asked whether Russia is helping to target U.S. troops, helping Iran to target U.S. troops, he kind of grinned and said to her, nice hairstyle. He obviously decided that he wasn't going to deny that that's what they're doing. Maybe that means they are doing it. Maybe that means they're not. I'll tell you this much. They have a massive incentive to do it. If I were in their position, given what the United States has been doing to their country for 5 years, I would not hesitate to help the Iranians to target the terrorists who make up the U.S. military. And the last video I want to share with you is a video of a gigantic blaze that has broken out at an industrial facility in Essex in England. Now, this, according to the BBC, is an industrial facility that produces fertilizer. The BBC says that 20 firefighters were taken to hospital after a blaze ripped through an industrial unit and spread to a fertilizer store, actually, triggering a major explosion. The fire service declared a major incident on Friday as more than 100 firefighters tackled the flames at Highlands Farm near the village of Rettendon, Essex. Now, this fire happened right after reports that U.S. B-1 bombers had taken off from a British airbase heading towards Iran. And shortly after Iran had repeatedly warned countries that are assisting the United States to launch this war of aggression and prosecute this war of aggression against Iran, that they would be considered to be legitimate targets by the Iranian military. And how difficult can it be when you think about it, if you have the resources of the Iranian government behind you, to cause a massive blame at an industrial facility in a European country that is helping the United States to commit war crimes and crimes against humanity against the Islamic Republic of Iran? I don't think it would be particularly difficult. There have to be a lot of industrial facilities throughout Europe that are extremely vulnerable in this way. And I wouldn't take the report that this is how the fire happened at face value. Who knows exactly why that gigantic blaze has broken out and what was actually being produced or stored at this huge industrial facility in Essex. Another point I would make is not just the Iranians who have an incentive to inflict this kind of damage on critical infrastructure in European countries that are helping the United States and Israel to attack Iran. The Russians also have a giant incentive to do this kind of thing as well. Now, I can't say, of course, whether the official story of how this fire broke out is accurate or complete. What I can say is that we should expect more and more incidents like this to happen in countries that are facilitating crimes against Iran or Russia or both. And no one should assume that retaliatory attacks such as these, if in fact that's what this was, will take place or be confined to Europe alone. You should not be surprised if something like this happens in the days or weeks ahead right here in North America. Again, let us hope that that does not come to pass and cooler heads prevail before we get to that point. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada on July 25th, 2026.